Welcome everyone to the last day of ASU+GSV. We made it. I'm very excited. I'm Alex. I'm an investor on the team with GSV. I woke up this morning feeling really grateful to have, heard so many great keynotes and panels, being able to hear about AI from Bill Gates and Sam Altman. And I also woke up a little panicked thinking, oh goodness, you guys have heard from Sam Altman and Bill Gates and AI sessions nonstop, and what could we possibly still have to talk about? But I think this panel is really special because I have 4 CEOs of some of the largest ed tech and workforce skills companies that really can have some of the greatest impact on learners and professionals with their offerings. And so just to quickly introduce them, I'll start with Jamie all the way at the end. So Jamie Candee is the president and CEO of Edmentum. And just to brag about them a little bit, they reach over 12,000 districts, institutions, partners that reach over 6.2 million students. And then I have Himanshu, who is the CEO of Cornerstone OnDemand, which reaches over 100 million users in 180 countries with over 7,000 customers. Then I have Andrew Grauer, who is the founder and CEO of Learneo. And through all their different platforms, Course Hero, Quillbot, Symbolab, and many others, they're having over 3 billion visits a year, which just think about the magnitude of that. And then I have Lex Bayer, who is the CEO of Quizlet, and they are reaching over 60 million students. And so again, just the sheer magnitude at the scale and their reach. And Himanshu said this yesterday on Stage X, with great reach comes great responsibility, but we're really excited to talk about how they are leveraging AI into their platform. So if I just start with Jamie, you started at Edmentum in 2005 and had a little stint away, but would love to quickly introduce what Edmentum does, and then if you could say, the biggest problem that you're focused on right now at Edmentum.
Great. Hey everybody, thanks for being at the session. So Edmentum, we are actually the first ed tech company. So we started over 60 years ago. We're K-12, so we primarily focus on all of our work is centered on learning acceleration and personalized learning for students K through 12. So what that actually looks like is for younger learners, focusing on where kids are at from a skill perspective, and then working with teachers to help accelerate learning. At the high school level, we have the largest online courses catalog available for middle school, high school students. And those courses are designed to be personalized learning, mastery-based, and highly customizable. So we serve just over 6 million kids here in the US, another million outside of the US. We're in over half the districts in the US. The biggest problem that we're focusing on right now, particularly as we talk about AI, personalized learning, is we come to these conferences and we're all centered and anchored on innovation and what's next for education. But if you actually go into classrooms, K-12 classrooms across America and abroad, there are much more fundamental issues happening in the classroom. And so for Edmentum, we spend a lot of time thinking, working with teachers, administrators, on how do we actually bring this kind of technology into classrooms at scale, right? So your highly affluent districts across the country are gonna have no problem bringing in technologist innovation for kids that are in those schools. But when you go into, whether it's a rural or urban school, it is really, really difficult to implement programs like this. So we're spending a lot of time helping really educate, go into teacher preparation programs across colleges and universities to say, like, how do we help? How do we bring teachers along? Because if you don't actually focus on the teacher feeling really empowered using these tools, you will not get to implementation at scale. So that's our biggest opportunity right now at Edmentum.
That's great. Himanshu?
Yeah, I think we take on the students that Jamie gives us when they enter into the corporate world and are responsible for their training, skilling, education, and career pathing. So we have both a learning management system, which is all about compliance, which is becoming just so germane today across the globe. And then we have something called learning experience platforms, where employees define their own skills, their career paths, what they want to do, where they want to go. And the biggest challenge, we have scale. Like Argo, you mentioned, we have about 100 million users, every 3 seconds a course is taken. But how many CLOs in the room here? I feel for all of you, because it's the wild west of technology in corporations today. There are systems that are disconnected. There are systems that are used by lines of businesses versus corporate. And our biggest challenge is creating sort of a homogeneous look at learning and making sure a learner, an employee, once he or she join a company, have a clear career path and clear skills ontology driven by personalized AI engine. So it's a great place to be in, but I literally think, Jamie, you hand them over to us, and it's our responsibility once they come into the corporate world.
That's great. Andrew?
I'm Andrew, and at Learneo, at the highest level, what we're trying to do is help people learn more, better, faster, more affordably, and help them do more, better, faster, more affordably. Across the platform, that might break down into helping people write better, faster, more affordably at Quillbot. That might end up being help people read better, faster, more affordably with lit charts or Eclipse notes. And when we break it down that way across different topics, different skills, different use cases, the biggest thing that we're trying to grapple with and understand is the speed at which AI advancements are accelerating. We've been working in this space in different ways since at least 2017, 2018, but the speed at which we went from GPT-3 to GPT-4, or even in between, just the explosion that came with ChatGPT, I think it's just wild to look at even the explosion of usage. I was just talking yesterday about the fact that in December, OpenAI and ChatGPT went from 20 million visits in that month to 300 million. And the following months, it went to 600 million visits, to 1.1 billion visits, to 1.6 billion visits in 4 months. And we were thinking that some of these advancements would happen over a number of years, and we've been working on the problems associated with question answering, summarization, translation problems, and language models. But the degree of accuracy that has been able to get to market is just incredibly fast. And ultimately, I think it pushes back on us at Learneo, whether it's at Course Hero, whether it's at Quillbot or Symbolab. How can ultimately we just help the customer better at what they're trying to do? Because it's incredibly hard to predict what the future holds, and therefore what would be durable, what would be valuable over medium and long-term time horizons. So you then just have to get back to first principles, which is quite uncomfortable.
It's definitely true. Lex?
Hi everyone, I'm Lex. I'm with Quizlet. We're used in 2 out of every 3 high schools and 1 out of every 2 colleges in the US. And we help students learn. They're learning stuff in the classroom, they're learning from their teachers. But when students want to sort of commit that to memory or deepen their understanding, they come to Quizlet to learn the materials, and students are uploading these materials to learn from. So our biggest challenge is, how do we help students learn? And it's well known, there's this famous study by Benjamin Bloom, the 2 sigma effect, that one-on-one tutoring is the most powerful way to teach people, right? You can meet students where they're at, you can understand their level. And so we're trying to bring this technology into the world, and that's become immensely more possible with what's happening in AI. In March, we launched a new product called QChat, which is the world's first AI tutor, powered by ChatGPT's API. We had early access to their API. And it does just that. It's a conversational experience that's really fun and engaging for students. A lot of us probably think about ChatGPT as somewhere you go to get answers. Tell me something. Actually, we've used it in reverse. We've used it as a Socratic method. When we use ChatGPT, it's asking the students questions. So the students come in, they're trying to learn some material, they say what they're going to learn, and then we start questioning them on it. We try to deepen their understanding. When they get stuck, we give them hints, and we keep trying to prompt the student to give us the answers and help them on their learning journey.
That's great. Lex, I'm going to stay with you because I think this is a great segue. But, you know, the panel that's called AI Personalized Learning, everyone continues to say, oh, finally, you know, with GPT-4 and OpenAI, we finally can unlock personalized learning. And I'm sitting here thinking, what does personalized learning even mean, right? There are so many different definitions. I think it's different to each individual. And so Lex, would love to hear from you what you think that this finally unlocks in terms of, if you define personalized learning, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think the gold standard is a human person actually working with a student one-on-one. And what does that person do? They ask the student what they're trying to learn. When the student gets stuck, they try and explain it to them. If the student still doesn't get it, they know to try and explain it in a different way. They're really adapting to that particular student and where they're at, what their skill level is, where they're getting stuck and hung up themselves. And so I think, again, the gold standard in personalizing is meeting the student where they're at and helping them along their journey in learning the material.
I think that's great. And then Himanshu, if I could throw it to you, if you think about a professional, right, what does it mean when you're in the workforce having this personalized learning or support? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, increasingly we have a global workforce. The world is flatter. There's more learning that's happening across boundaries and geographies. And if you think about it, the velocity of learning is culturally so different. In America, in the Western world, we fundamentally grow up with a concept of personalized learning. We have extracurricular activities, we promote electives, you have minors, majors, you can switch, you can do double minors, double majors. So people at least have a grounding on what options are. You move to other geographies, you move to France, which is a culture based on debate. You move to India, which is like rote discipline. You move to China, which is about hyper-specialization. Now you have a global workforce that is going to learn very differently. So imagine putting a 6-week Java programming class for all these people. The velocities and the level of personalization is completely different. From my understanding to my pace to, I was saying on the stage yesterday, there are cultures where running videos at 1.5 times speed is how you learn. There are others that are highly analytical in nature. So our job, taking advantage of this, we bought a company 4 years ago called Clustery, which is a foundation of Cornerstone's AI engine, is understanding that characteristic of a learner and curating courses, pace, quality, and assessment based upon that. So I think that the new world of personalized learning is going to be, you're the universe of one, you learn very differently than the person sitting next to you, and you would expect the system to be aware of that.
And then Jamie, where does the teacher come in this, right?
So we do believe the teacher's at the center, and I'll just, to kind of give you an understanding of what's happening in K-12 school systems. So for what we do at Edmentum with our personalized learning tools, it's very high stakes. And so what do I mean by that? Typically the students that we're working with, and this is a higher percentage now coming out of COVID than pre-COVID, are students who have learning challenges. So they've either missed opportunities, they're not on grade level, they're struggling from a skill perspective. We're hearing the science of reading quite frequently right now. We have a literacy challenge in this country like no other. So when they start to engage with our products, when I say high stakes, it's very important that we understand where the students are at and that we're doing two things. We're helping the teachers. So if you imagine a third grade teacher, the way that the system works here in this country is you start at the beginning of your academic year, all students are diagnostically assessed. We have those diagnostic tools. It then tells you something about your students. So if you're a third grade teacher, you get this information back, and it tells you largely where your students are falling in terms of skill proficiency, grade level, and then what opportunities you have as a teacher to help them catch up and continue to learn at their grade and age level. And so when those students are grouped, the way that we think about personalized learning and the important role of the teacher, historically teachers have really struggled to differentiate instruction for all 30 kids in a classroom. What this technology, our tools, allow the teacher to do is understand where each grouping of students are at, and then what tools are available for the teacher to apply towards student learning and learning acceleration. So in many cases, when you walk into classrooms, what you'll see is a teacher sitting at a table, and he or she will be doing small group instruction with a set of students. You go to the next table, those students are working on one of our products on their own, so very personalized, learning focused. And then you'll go to a next table and they might be using print materials or manipulatives. And so you'll see this whole station rotation thing happening, but at the center of it is the teacher who is in command and control, right? So this opportunity that we have to bring teachers along, we do not believe that our tools should directly and only teach the student. We are here to be the greatest teaching assistant to our teachers. And so we take that responsibility very seriously because there's a lot of other things that are happening in the classroom and to each student. If I am in third grade and I'm reading at a first grade level, there's a whole variety of reasons for that. And oftentimes it's way beyond academic issues. There are social emotional issues, there's trauma, there's things going on, and teachers need to be present and at the center of understanding those issues, because if your belly's not full and you don't feel safe, you're not gonna learn to read. So we take the approach of everything that we develop and build, we spend an inordinate amount of our time studying with teachers how we make sure they feel empowered to use these tools to serve their students.
Do you believe it is the responsibility of the school and the teacher to really figure out how to deploy these tools? And whether I'm talking about a Quizlet or a ChatGPT or any of these amazing consumer-first tools to support learners, is it the job of the teacher and the school to kind of regulate what the students have access to, or is it, should you just let students adopt these tools?
I think it depends. So what we're seeing coming out of the pandemic, which I've been doing this work for a long time, and one of the things, pandemic was hard for everybody, but one of the things I'm most excited about is this rising voice of parent, student, and community in terms of what we expect to see in the classroom and within our system. So when you are teaching kids from a core instruction perspective, we think there needs to be deep engagement and buy-in from the state, the district, the schools, and the teachers. But there are so many amazing learning tools available that, whether it's one-to-one tutoring or any of the tools that allow kids to feel engaged in the learning process, there is no possible way that districts, state policymakers, federal policymakers are going to be able to regulate all that. It is all of our job as an ecosystem of learning and teaching that we educate, right? So most of the energy right now in public education is going into preventing ChatGPT from existing at all in terms of the classroom, right? Like that's where the energy is going, that's where the policy is going. So how do we, you look at there's 7,000 people here right now, like we have this opportunity. If we don't help educate, create comfort, and create a sort of a safe environment for educators and administrators and policymakers to really understand the power, we're not going to get anywhere, at least in K-12, right? So there's this process we have to go through to bring people along. So I think it depends in terms of what you regulate and don't. If you are deciding grades, advancement, promotion to grade levels for a child, you absolutely have to have engagement with the district and the policymakers because that is high stakes. You're making decisions about a kid's life. All of the other things that we bring into the learning environment that are so exciting, we think that that should evolve organically, but there has to be an education and buy-in process as part of it.
Absolutely. And so Lex and Andrew, as you're thinking about, tools like Quizlet, Course Hero, really getting them into the hands of students, but also bringing the teachers along and bringing the community along. And I know teachers are users of both Course Hero and Quizlet. How are you thinking about that in terms of, delivering the offering and delivering this AI in a really safe way?
I think we've got to be incredibly thoughtful about how we use these technologies. Obviously, we know there are challenges with them. They're brand new. They're proliferating. AIs come with inherent bias on certain issues. They produce fictions. There are other problems as well. Current ChatGPT doesn't go past 2021, and it's really, really bad at certain things like math. So it's important that we're thoughtful about how we bring this into the learning experience. Some of the ways I think we can do that is really to think about how we design these experiences. I think the message I'd like to share out here is AI can be incredibly powerful when channeled, and we'll probably find that the companies on the stage and people focused on education will bring these technologies into the classroom experience or the learning experiences in ways that make sense for students. Whereas, ChatGPT was just put there out almost as an experiment. So as I mentioned, we're doing this in a way where we're forcing students to answer and engage with us as part of a learning experience. We're also providing moderation tools on our QChat experience. So not only are we checking the conversations using OpenAI's tools, but we have third-party tools as well that we're using. We also avoid things that we know that it's not good at the moment. And then we're engaging almost weekly with our students and our teachers to see how they're finding the experience, if they're flagging any content that they think isn't good, and then our teams can work on. So if you do all of this and we're responsible about it and thoughtful, I think we can have great learning experiences for students. And then, of course, we're also being mindful about how we roll this out. We're doing it in phases and seeing how it goes and how it's being received. But at the moment, it's been overwhelmingly positive. I think when teachers first engage with our product, they're like, oh, you can do this too? This feels very different from a ChatGPT experience, especially when it's prompting the students through questions and answers.
Jamie, I also like what you said about engaging different stakeholders in the ecosystem. So I think it's really important that we engage with students. We also have a community of over 150,000 educators, and trying to get the perspectives of different types of students in different types of courses, different types of schools, across high school, across college, across grad school, and then same thing on the educator side, is really helpful to get the different perspectives when figuring out what to build, what not to build, how to make improvements, et cetera. So I think philosophically or from a process perspective, I think that's a really great way to approach the problem. I think from the lens of personalization, I think inherently in there you get this subjective judgment, or leads to a question like, what does it mean to you? Because just the definition is the customization of the pace and the approach to teaching. And I think for us, one way to think about this at, say, a Course Hero would be, how can you take somebody at a moment of a question with a form of inquiry-based learning where you get the input and then there's going to be some sort of feedback. Feedback is inherent when conferring, and just, I think, giving the opportunity in our jargon of having human in the loop. Having the ability to give a potential recommendation back, an explanation, an answer. In the case of writing, it could be, here's a grammar error, here's a spell check error. Here's a different way to write that with more fluency, more creativity, etc. But having then the opportunity to do something with that as an individual. It's really fun to think about some of these opportunities of what do you do from then that point solution of, I put in an input and here's an output back to you, user or person. I think what's incredibly exciting that's happening now is the ability to then do the next step. For years we've been talking about what does a knowledge graph look like? How could you actually have an understanding of a really complex problem about where are the gaps in my knowledge? And we all have different context levels, different understanding levels, and that's where customization can come in. Historically, that's been an incredibly complex problem, right? I think it's an incredible moment that we're at, where you're going to be able to have really strong ability. We have really strong ability to give fast, quality, affordable feedback, answers and explanations to different queries. The next question is going to be, can you build a better content recommendation engine? And can you also do it in the context of my own history and my own objectives? That's been a dream, whether it's an affordable, accessible, private tutor for anybody in the world, or many other different types of use cases. It's a dream. But I think there's still a lot of work to get there. I think what's incredible is how fast we've gotten now to the first step, because people have been trying to work on this for a very long time. And just to pause and take a moment of what's happened in the last 3 to 6 months is pretty wild.
It is definitely very wild. Just talking about that pace of how rapidly this tech is evolving. And again, Himanshu, to go back to what you said, where, with great reach comes great responsibility. And so how are you thinking about, within all your respective larger organizations, right, not falling to this, lack of innovation and really embedding this tech into what you're offering, but kind of grappling with the fact that you need to deliver it in a safe way and you have higher stakes. So how are you,
Yeah, look, there's been a lot thrown at us as humanity in the last 3 to 5 years. Cryptocurrency, working from home, mobility, impact of social media on children, what's TikTok going to evolve into, ChatGPT. So we've not had a chance as humanity to step back and take a deep breath and then look back over the last 100 years. Industrial revolution was going to take the farmer out, the calculator was going to take the accountant out, ChatGPT is going to take teachers out. That never happens, right? Technology resolves itself. I think in some ways, and I tell my people this all the time, we all need to play our positions in this. Let the technologists worry about technology. Let the legislators worry about legislation. Let the teachers rethink about how nonlinear training is going to happen. Let parents step back and understand that our kids are learning more than we have the capability to understand and grasp and change our lens. So while it's worrisome, right, we all thought the world would come to an end when Y2K was going to happen. Everything follows a hype cycle, and then normalization happens. Cybersecurity, cyber threats, ransomware, it's all around us. But we got to take faith in the fact, seeing our friend Bill Gates on stage yesterday, there are very bright minds spending billions and billions of dollars trying to get ahead of this curve. So what do we need to do? And I have thesis on the K-12, but I'll leave it to the experts. Speaking of knowledge workers once they enter the workforce, a CHRO once told me, the head of HR, that we know more about our employee the day before they're hired than we know a couple years later. We don't know what skills they got. We don't know how they got assessed. We don't know. There's a guy, Walmart told me that there's a forklift operator in Portland who speaks 2 languages who can also work the till. We still go back to things like LinkedIn, and if you don't find it, you go hire someone new. So this whole skills mess that we are into today, and in fact, I made a decision last year in October to open up our skills database. We have 53,000 skills, and say, folks, everybody build on these skills. This is not something that needs to be proprietary. I shouldn't be competing with somebody else saying I have more skills than you do. I don't own those skills. So I think the great responsibility, the great learning is let's use and harness this technology to do what we do best and worry about and know that there are politicians and lawyers and legislators and knowledge workers who will worry about the other artifacts versus today all of us admiring the problem and worrying about, is this sentient? Is there a conscience? Is there hallucination? All these things in technology, it's a great, the WhatsApp University will graduate on that with opinions that everybody seems to have, but I'm not that worried about it. I hope I'm right.
Yeah. It's interesting. So, I mean, Jamie, Andrew, Lex, are you guys taking similar approaches when talking to your organization? Everyone, stick to what your job is doing. I also think that, there are things like ChatGPT and generative AI are fundamentally changing what you can do with your solutions, your organization. So how are you, shifting your strategy as an organization?
Yeah, I'll just add, last year at this time, I think this is your first year at the conference, but raise your hand last year if you were sitting in a room like this where we were talking about the metaverse and Web3, right? So to your point, it is a very interesting time indeed, but so I actually wanted to talk about it from the perspective of inside outside and at a very practical level. So what I think is most exciting and what we're working on that we think is most exciting, and for those of you that are operators, when you look at the possibilities, and we talked about curating content, it is very expensive. We provide core curriculum to all 50 states, and so the constant process of having to update standards, which change very frequently, it is incredibly expensive, right? So the ability to use these tools to both generate and be able to customize the products that we already have today, so there's an operating leverage and efficiency aspect to what we're doing that requires very little oversight in terms of what we do from a product perspective with our customers. So we're really excited about that. We have a ton of things going on inside the organization that we're prototyping, we're trying out and trialing. As we move out, going back to the high stakes piece that I talked about, we have to be very careful, right? Do no harm to kids. And so we have to make sure we're really excited about this possibility of going from personalized learning 1.0 to personalized learning 2.0. And so what do I mean by that? So the way that our personalized learning tools work is you have all these standards that you have to know, right, in public education as a child going through each grade level, and you're measured against those standards. And so we go in with our diagnostics, we figure out what you've learned and what you haven't learned, and then we help you catch up on the things you haven't learned. 1.0 is just figuring out the things and serving up basically the same set of content for all kids, just organized differently. 2.0, what our product organization is working on, is understanding more about you and having a whole variety of things based on what you're interested on and the best way that you learn, still covering the same standards, right? Still going in and figuring out what you know or don't know, where we need to get you as that third grader, but giving you a lot more variety in terms of how we serve that up. So that's gonna take things like understanding more interest inventory and all these different things about the child, the whole child, and then serving up the academic content in a way that that child wants to consume it in a whole different variety of ways to do it. So the last piece that I'll say about it is there's a lot of organizations and alliances that are really important to this work that we're doing. From a K-12 perspective, we're advisory members of the EdSafe AI Alliance, right? And there's a lot of different organizations where as a community and as an ecosystem working together, we can help come up with the right policies. So as we are, at least in K-12, we have to be very careful and we have to spend a lot of time with policymakers, helping them understand at a very basic ground level what this all means to their kids, to their schools, to their constituents. It's very, very important. So if you can go in with very personal examples, just very quickly, my son is a 13-year-old, absolutely hates writing. He can write, he hates it. So I had him use ChatGPT to come up with his original idea, right? Start with an idea. To watch this kid over the last couple of months, the way he's writing now, in terms of how engaging and the critical thinking skills that he's using, because he's no longer stuck with the first part, right? He is able to iterate on his writing, and that is incredible progress just in 3 months' time. You take that, I've literally taken that to policymakers all over the country right now, and I sit down and I walk them through, this is what's possible. And when they start to see it from an equity lens, like any kid anywhere can actually learn the way he or she needs and wants to learn, that is incredibly powerful. But it takes this entire ecosystem to educate, because this is very confusing to the people who are setting laws in this country. So I'll just say that. And so I think that's a really important aspect of what we do.
I think I'm going to sort of agree and disagree with both Himanshu and Jamie. I don't think AI is a hype cycle. I think this is really groundbreaking technology that's going to fundamentally change society. Jamie's agreeing. And it's going to happen really quickly. Andrew talked about how fast these technologies are being adapted by people. And the reason is we're finding it useful. It's making our lives easier. We're getting access to information. It's making us more efficient. So this is coming, and it's coming fast. And even if we ban ChatGPT, Google has their own version. There's Anthropic. There are lots of them. They're open source versions. This is not something that's going to go away.
Just to clarify, I agree with you.
Okay, great.
The fear and hype right now around ChatGPT is going to go through a cycle that will come down. AI is fundamentally going to change. 2/3 of the jobs are going to be different in 5 years because of AI. So
well, then we're agreeing and agreeing, because I'm going to agree as well that it's going to be good for the world. And here's why. If you step back, the reason people are adopting this is because we're finding it valuable. And if we focus on actually educating people and kids and students, we have to educate them with the future world that they're going to be inheriting and existing in. And that's going to include these technologies. And so actually getting people comfortable with them, having them understand the technologies and the limitations. And then these technologies are also going to be super powerful. As Jamie mentioned, it can really democratize access. There's such a technology and a resource gap that happens in our education system today. And these technologies have the power to even that out and really provide more students with better tools to help their learning. So I think it's going to work out, and I do agree that there's been sort of a huge sort of amount of fear and worry right now, but you know, society always comes out stronger through these things, and it's been sort of the history of the world that technologies can be used for bad and for good, but ultimately the good is going to prevail.
Yeah, can you, Andrew, I know I would want you to speak to this as well, but I would love to hear also, I mean, you know, everyone right now is figuring out their own AI strategy and how can they embed this AI into their companies. And I think what you're doing with Learneo is really interesting as a platform and an aggregator of various companies across verticals. And I would love for you to talk about how with this new technology you're thinking about, you know, whether it's Quillbot or Symbolab, or how 1 + 1 can equal 3 as you combine these different solutions.
Yeah, well, first of all, processing the perspectives on the previous question, I think for me what really resonates is that idea of writer's block. And how can you unblock that moment? Or if I'm stuck studying in homework or for a test or for a report, these moments, if I could unblock or unstuck, seem small. But I love looking at that moment in the context of then zooming out and looking at the lives of different students in, say, the United States in undergraduate education, and you look at their lives in many cases, and you've got 40% of undergraduates working 35 hours or more per week. You've got over a quarter of students who are parents, and you look at a graduation rate that's something like 40% after matriculation 6 years later. And so you then take a high-level view, and then you go back down to that moment, and you think about, is that moment that breaks the camel's back? And I think that context is super important if you can then think about what are accessible, affordable, timely, custom solutions as then context to set the problem statement and the opportunity statement. And then we think about breaking this down by topics or skills, whether it's in reading, writing, arithmetic. And we found, to bridge to your question, Alex, at Learneo, when we've thought about operating more horizontally, across studying, learning, into productivity, in communication over time, that is relatively much more horizontal than we've ever been building historically. Because I think to create a lot of value, you need to work on detailed steps. You know, in the life of us as learners or teachers, we're teaching one topic or one question at a time. And you have to go question by question, assessment by assessment, course by course, to build up to an elective, to a major, to a set of skills, etc. But you also, in reverse, have a goal, have a vision of what do I want to accomplish in going in reverse. And I think that trying to bridge those two is really, really important. It's a struggle. It's complicated, but you can't achieve what you want without doing that. In the context of Learneo, we found that in building companies, it takes so much passion and energy and time to be able to focus on details. So being able at Symbolab to work in their biweekly sprints on improving or adding a derivative calculator or an integration calculator is something that would not necessarily ever be on the roadmap at Quillbot. When I'm thinking about what am I going to do after a grammar checker and a spell checker to go to a citation generator. And they're fundamentally different vectors of building for very important use cases. And what we're excited about doing is being able to build for more and more use cases with really energized, mission-aligned, values-aligned entrepreneurs and builders to go super deep individually for a relatively closely clustered set of needs. But then, as a platform, really build horizontally for a lot more use cases.
Yeah, that's interesting. We are quickly running out of time, but Himanshu, I want to come back to you for a second. And you know, Jamie talked about getting unstuck, and that's definitely something that these platforms can unlock. But you mentioned something to me in our pre-call around, you know, there actually might be a problem or an issue with using these large language models or these tools that give you one answer, right? That provide one answer. And can you talk a little bit about what some of the
Yeah, I mean, it's a long debate, and I think you touched on it earlier, is the bias in an algorithm compounds itself the more it is used and can create some very undesirable results. That's A. B, yesterday I talked a little bit about the discipline of learning. Learning, in especially K through 12, I believe, is about unlocking potential, rewiring synapses, and you have to go through a process to achieve that, I believe. And maybe I'll be proven wrong where there's an avatar of me that's smarter than me. But the challenge today is taking a kid or taking a new worker and then getting them deep on a subject without the context, without the personalization, without sort of the discipline, runs the risk of garbage in, garbage out, where everyone's an expert. We saw that through the pandemic. You know, everyone on my WhatsApp group was a virologist. And everyone is knowledgeable to the detriment of a solution. So my worry is, and like I said, so I'm not misquoted, a big believer in this, things will sort itself out, but the onus lies on us 7,000 people here and the other 7 billion outside, is let's treat it with that level of integrity and discipline rather than looking at it as a panacea to education and learning, because it's not. There's been millions of years of human evolution on how we learn, and a chat GPT can't just come and change that completely without setting context. So your example, Jamie, was the perfect one with your 13-year-old. You know, what a great tool to get someone started. And then the evolution of learning with your child will be very different. But you can sort of give that up as a parent and say, you know, you don't need anything anymore. Just use that to do all your writing and you're done. That would be careless. So that's my worry.
Great. Okay, we are rapidly running out of time, so sorry if I keep you over, but I just want to go to each panelist quickly. I think a lot of times we talk in very broad strokes about how to manage this and think about this. What is something that you're doing on a day-to-day basis every day to try to either, you know, get more acquainted with these tools or develop your AI strategy, or something that you could do every day and some advice you could give to the crowd?
So if you're not, I'll just use ChatGPT. Like, I literally have it up. And like every time we're in a meeting in leadership, I'm writing job descriptions, I'm asking it what I should have for dinner. Like, you just start using it. It is amazing if you're just like literally using it in the flow of your daily life. And it will start to unlock the capabilities and power that you can then envision for your organizations, whatever you're doing in this world, bringing value to the world. Like, just start using it and exploring, and it just unlocks so much potential.
Yeah, I was going to say that, is adopt
Can't
and
repeat.
accept.
Can't repeat.
Sorry?
Can't repeat.
Yeah, adopt and accept because it's not going away. But again, we started an innovation lab on ChatGPT at Cornerstone, but I also put another group, largely our legal people, saying, why is this a bad thing? Find the flaws in these models. So I think we approach it holistically, but to Jamie's point, embrace it because it is a game changer and it's not going away anytime soon or forever.
I'd see if you could find a small cohort or peer group that is interested in a particular topic to share learnings with or problems with, et cetera, about the topic. In our world, we play around with different words. We call a fellowship because I love Lord of the Rings, and we have a fellowship of CEOs and entrepreneurs, and we are literally just sharing with each other, whether it's different new models that are coming out, or different perspectives on a new application, and it's quite helpful because there's way too much information that's coming in too fast. It's like you go to bed and you wake up in the morning and it's like, what did I miss? And I already feel behind, and like it's like so much noise versus signal. And I think just having that empathy of a peer group is really powerful, but also one that's not too big, so that you can actually have that connection.
I'd encourage people to help multiple parts of organizations engage in this topic. I think what's natural is that the innovators, the technologists are going to think about this or work on it, but it's actually the pockets of the organization that think it doesn't apply to them or what they're doing that we have to help move along the curve to understand it, understand how it can be used and some of the issues that it has. So I'd encourage people to sort of ask different teams, hey, have you thought about this? Does this relate to you? And sort of prompt those discussions, and it's amazing what you get back.
Awesome. Can I get a round of applause for these amazing panelists? Thank you, guys.